We're going to be reading them a quote in support of that policy, but what they don't know is the quote is actually President Obama's from 2014. Will that change their opinion? Let's find out. Donald Trump announced this past week that he would be urging ICE and other administration authorities to seek out people living here illegally that have broken the law, to deport them. So I have a quote for you here that's been making the rounds on social media about the deportation of criminal illegal aliens. "We are a nation of laws. Undocumented workers broke our laws, and I believe they must be held accountable, especially those who may be dangerous. That's why over the past 6 years, deportations of criminals are up 80%, and we're going to keep focusing on threats to our security." What's your thought on that quote and that policy in general?
I think that policy comes from a place of like white American nationalism. Donald Trump has kind of like embraced this rhetoric of like racism and xenophobia that is not beneficial to our country at all.
I don't think that quote really stands true.
This administration has totally not done anything moral.
This is really awful.
Amnesty does not necessarily mean that we're losing border security. I think that Trump feels that way.
I think that's a bad decision because, like, the United States should be open to like immigrants. Like it's like they call it land of the free for a reason.
We just have to advocate for those kinds of people and people like in Congress, like Ocasio-Cortez, who is helping people overcome these kinds of things.
Crimes do not nullify your humanity, and people are coming here in search of opportunity.
So my position is I believe Trump is antithetical to everything American, whether that is him abusing powers, going against the Constitution. I mean, mainly those two things. His foreign policy, national policy is obviously all pretty atrocious. But if you want to talk about him abusing executive powers, I'd like to talk about that. Specifically in reference to the Mayor Adams case, where he's dropping the charges without prejudice.
Go ahead.
Is that not a blatant form of corruption that he's extorting? How is dropping a charge without prejudice on a mayor that got federally indicted not corrupt?
It happens all the time. I mean,
I know what you're talking about.
But, I mean, the charges were political in nature. President Trump got targeted by the Department of Justice. He goes out of his way to also show lawfare goes after both parties and drops the charges against a Democrat mayor, Eric Adams. Dropping charges without prejudice happens all the time. Biden did it for a lot of cases that the Trump administration had. If we want to talk abuse of power, maybe we should talk about how Joe Biden pardoned his entire family the last hour of his presidency. How Joe Biden pardoned Anthony Fauci preemptively, and Adam Kinzinger preemptively, and Liz Cheney preemptively, and Adam Schiff preemptively. Not that Donald Trump's DOJ dropped charges against Eric Adams. Joe Biden is the one that had to preemptively pardon his brother and his entire crime syndicate with the stroke of a pen the last hour of his presidency. If anybody is abusing power, it would be the prior president who didn't even know he was president, not Donald Trump.
Okay, so, I mean, you kind of pivoted there, but I will acknowledge what Joe Biden did was probably a corrupt abuse of actions. I would say abuse of power, but you also have to acknowledge Donald Trump is also abusing power in the same instant.
How? Because you keep saying that.
Because yes, he's extorting him because he's now letting ICE run jurisdiction in Rikers Island, which Mayor Adams signed an executive order letting ICE go back into Rikers Island.
Okay, so what are your facts? Where are the documents? Where are the first-hand, original source testimony that show there's an extortion at play? That's a huge accusation.
So Emil Bove even said himself, the Deputy Attorney General, that he's dropping these charges not based off any evidence, but it would be because it would interfere with his mayor duties. I don't know why we should drop federal charges on someone that for mayor interfering with mayor duties. That doesn't really make sense to me. I mean, but you would acknowledge I'm confused on why you don't think this is corrupt. Him federally dropping federal charges.
Because it's not corrupt. Again, lawfare is a problem that affects both parties.
I mean, but
so
you would agree what Joe Biden did is corrupt, but not Trump?
No. One was pardoning your family for the first time in American history. The other one is inheriting a sloppy, politically targeted case of the Department of Justice and then dismissing those charges.
But they said they're not dropping it based on the case of the evidence. They're not dropping it based on any type of evidence.
You can drop based on again. That's one Deputy Attorney General's interpretation. But why don't you tell me what Eric Adams was charged with?
For bribery, I believe misuse of funds. He defrauded New York for $5 million.
Yeah, like taking international flights on Turkish Airlines. I mean, it was like this insane case.
I mean, you're downplaying it, but
of course I am. Because let's be honest, why is it that Eric Adams was indicted?
Because he got caught of committing federal crime.
No, because Eric Adams was the only blue state mayor in the country to speak out against Biden's mass migration invasion. And they used Eric Adams as an example to try to say, if you dare step out of line against the 10 million people that come across the southern border, we will come against you. But how is it an abuse of power to do what the Department of Justice is constituted to do?
Because this isn't based off any evidence. This is a federal indictment. Obviously, if you want to make the distinction that He tried, was it his immigration policy could be reflective of why he got charged. That is only speculation. There'd be zero proof in that. What we do know is that Mayor Adams did go to Mar-a-Lago, and then, was it 3 days later, he got the charges dropped on him without prejudice? And if it was corrupt, why is he dropping without prejudice? Why wouldn't he just drop the charges or pardon him?
Do you know what without prejudice means?
Yeah, they can bring the charges back.
Yes, that's actually
Exactly.
that's even a lower grade of it, which means that if there's more evidence, then they can reintroduce charges. But so they didn't do it with prejudice.
But it's not based off the evidence.
I'm interested though. So out of all the examples you could use, you think Donald Trump's corrupt and abuse of power because he has dropped the politically charged motivation
of the mayor
of the largest state in the country?
We can go to him improperly using tariffs, calling national emergencies on Canada. He said there's a fentanyl crisis in Canada. There absolutely is.
No, there's fentanyl crisis in our country coming from Canada.
But he's saying it's happening at the northern border. That's how he's able to unilaterally accept. So do you believe do you believe him implementing tariffs is him executing his economic policy or national policy?
Well, national security, both. Yeah.
Do you think? I mean, you would agree that if you're going to try stopping fentanyl from coming into the country, you would at least give them a target number to get to. He hasn't provided anything.
No, he did. That's not
correct. What's the number?
Well, actually, it was privately discussed because you don't know that, but that's fine. It was privately discussed.
So what's the number? What is he?
I'm not going to tell you the number, but I happen to know it. But like again, there was a benchmark that Canada was given in the intermediary period, Canada and Mexico. And by the way, do you know how many people die from drug overdoses every year in America?
A lot. That's not what I'm not.
Actually, it is what you're asking. It's 100. Hold on a second.
Okay.
It's absolutely what it is. It's 110,000 people die from drug overdoses, and a lot of people in South Carolina die from drug overdoses. That's a national security problem. When you have drugs flowing from a foreign country into your nation, and you use tariffs as a way to stop it, that is well within the commander-in-chief duties of the President of the United States. And President Trump was elected to do that.
Yeah, so, I mean, we're just talking about problems. 99.8% of the fentanyl that comes in this country does not come from the northern border. The same way he's enacting national emergencies on all the countries to implement his tariffs across the world.
Well, just to be clear, the Canadian tariffs were also because more people on the terrorist watch list come across the northern border than the southern border. So it was fentanyl plus the terrorist watch list. But then you would agree the Mexican tariffs are great because almost all the fentanyl in this country come across the southern border from Mexico.
I would say you have more of a case, but I believe why Trump is enacting these tariffs is clear for his economic policy. That's probably pretty corrupt. Him revoking constitutional rights is also pretty corrupt.
Wait, hold on. What constitutional rights is he revoking?
The Fifth Amendment, First Amendment.
The future of any nation is ultimately shaped and determined by its people, ladies and gentlemen, and most critically, by its youth. By its youth. Young people are the next generation of leaders, innovators, parents, citizens. And the values they carry will determine the direction of their society. Yeah, that's why throughout history, the most effective way to weaken or to destroy any nation is always been to corrupt and to mislead young people. Yeah, the enemy knows it too well, ladies and gentlemen. He knows it too well. His number one strategy is to target the minds and the hearts of young people. He's not naive. No. Through distorted education, destructive entertainment, pop culture, woke packaging, all those things, moral confusion, and erosion of family and faith. Those are the tools of deception that he uses. Those are the tools of deception. If he can compromise the integrity, identity, and purpose of the next generation, you collapse everything, ladies and gentlemen, everything in the nation.
On who? For what U.S. citizen?
Yeah.
What U.S. citizen does not have Fifth Amendment rights?
Okay, so you would agree that other people inside the United States, like lawful permanent residents, are also getting their green cards, also getting their Fifth Amendment revoked, right?
But green card holders don't get the same constitutional rights.
Do.
No, they do not. If an MS-13 member is in jail, they don't get Fifth Amendment rights.
Garcia is not an MS-13 member. That was all hearsay.
Oh, no, hold on a second.
He was
already charged for it in court documents.
No.
He's been here for 10 years. He tried to evade, and he actually is back in his home country of El Salvador in a much different type of environment.
Would you agree that the judge, Trump is literally ignoring judges' orders. He got a withholding for removal, correct?
Well, hold on. Tension between the second and third branch is nothing new. But explain to me how a circuit court judge, a federal judge, A district court judge has jurisdiction about what happens over international waters. Explain that to me.
No, I'm not even talking about the TROs that was implemented. I'm talking specifically about the Maryland case. How?
No, the Maryland case is that. So they scoop this guy up. They send him to El Salvador. How does a guy, a district court judge, have jurisdiction what happens in international waters?
You're referring to Boasberg. I'm not. I'm talking about the Maryland judge that gave him withholding for removal. They violated that completely. They took him out of Maryland.
Hold on, no, you have to answer the question. The guy's in El Salvador now.
Yeah, I know. But
so then how does that judge have any jurisdiction over that?
Because you're referring to Boasberg implementing the TROs.
They're both.
I mean, if you're going to talk about him,
this Maryland judge just ordered the return of this guy in El Salvador. Yes.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, yeah. So how does that judge have jurisdiction?
I'm not even referring to that. I'm referring to 2019, way before he was granted withholding for removal. Correct?
Okay, I'm not familiar. I'm not as familiar with that.
He was granted withholder for removal. And then, the ICE agents took him and deported him. That is completely
I do have to
contrary.
take a step back. Do you guys see how far the left fights for MS-13 members?
I'm not, no.
You are fighting for that.
Because no, I'm not. I'm fighting for constitutional rights, not MS-13 members.
Hold on a second. These illegals do not have the same constitutional rights we do. They don't vote. They don't get to vote. They can't buy firearms. They don't get the same due process. You broke our laws to come into this country. You don't get the same rights as a U.S. citizen, especially if you are part of MS-13. Especially if you are part of an enemy occupying force.
No.
And what I find, and again, this is a left-wing tactic to try to slow down the deportation effort, try to make saying, well, we need to have human rights for all the people that are coming here. Where were the human rights for the student at University of South Carolina that was just killed? Or the human rights of Laken Riley that was just killed at the University of Georgia? And the left is intentionally trying to make permanent the enemy occupation of our land, trying to use our own customs against us for people that have never cared about our customs altogether. It is a giant scam, and I hope the deportations continue at great pace.
Once again, my point was not about me caring for illegal immigrants, MS-13 members, gang members. It was strictly on constitutional rights. There has been no case law to say that illegal immigrants don't deserve Fifth Amendment rights or First Amendment rights, which are clearly being revoked. You would agree that he's not getting due process, correct?
No, there absolutely is case law. You can repel an invasion.
No,
if a nation invades you, are you allowed to repel them, shoot them? Are you allowed to do that? Or do you have to stop every person that invades you and say, well, you have a right to speak and a right to an attorney? These are enemy combatants on our land. You don't have to all of a sudden give them a lawyer.
I mean, if you just don't like American law, that's fine. But people under the jurisdiction of the United States.
If someone invades America, what are we allowed to do?
You're allowed to deport them. Absolutely.
No. Forget deporting them. I'm talking about like invasion.
What would you consider an invasion? Are you talking about coming over here with guns? Like,
oh no, that's interesting. So MS-13 is a state-sponsored narco-terrorist organization from the government of Venezuela. This is not just a bunch of moms carrying babies. These are military-aged men that were previously in jail that were here with the intent to sow discord and crime and hurt the American people. Therefore, they are an enemy force on our land.
Fair, but Garcia wasn't. You can acknowledge that.
No, he was.
He absolutely. It was completely hearsay. Marco Rubio and Caroline Leavitt have both lied about that.
Okay,
it was complete hearsay. And to be clear, so for the 260 other people that have not got due process, you were fine with Trump invoking the Aliens Enemies Act to revoke them of due process.
Yeah, it should be 26,000 of them.
So
and they're illegals. Again, by the way, this should send a message to the rest of the world.
How do we know where they're illegal?
Because they don't have proper documentation. Where's your passport?
They weren't given due process.
I don't have one. No. You see, that's not true. Due process is a completely different thing of actually how these flights were loaded up. They went through scrupulous detail of every single individual. They had their identity. They fingerprinted them. They double-checked them with their country of origin. And then they say, hey, are you a citizen? They say no. Can we look in the database? There was an incredible amount of precision that went into this. But if you believe the media's lie, that, they just scooped up a bunch of random 260 people on the side of the street. Just so we're clear, the people on this flight were accused of raping children. These are people. Yes, they are. No, that's 100% true.
I know, true. But I'm not even making that argument. You're trying to get to a morality argument. No, I'm talking strictly from the American Constitution, right? Because I'm not even.
Where in the U.S. Constitution does it say those rights and privileges are applicable to people that come to your land illegally?
It gives credence to every person in the jurisdiction of the United States.
Yeah, but not if they're uninvited, and that goes back to the 14th Amendment argument that if you come into our land illegally, you're not given the same rights as those that are able to that just break in. I do have to ask a question though, which is why the fight suddenly for the MS-13 members.
It's not MS-13 members. Once again, I'm going to state it again. I'm fighting for the Constitution of the United States, right? This is for America, not for, I don't care, like, even the people that murder people, they just still do deserve a right to a
just be
trial.
consistent. Did you speak up at all the last 4 years when American citizens that were January 6th defendants didn't have any of their constitutional rights? Were you out there going to open mics advocating for them?
I mean, I'm not aware.
No, answer the question.
Yeah, okay, so
were you fighting for American citizens that were given no pretrial detention, no attorney or representation? Were you out there fighting for the Constitution, or do you only fight for MS-13 members when it's politically convenient?
Yeah, no, so...
No, answer the question.
Absolutely, absolutely. If everything you said is true, I would absolutely be against that.
Did you? No, did you?
I'm not even aware of it. So
exactly.
That's not exactly.
That's the point.
I just agree
that was
with you.
the greatest deprivation of constitutional rights that we saw from the federal government of our own citizens. And then out of nowhere, all these groups that wouldn't be found for 4 years, that they lift a finger when moms went into the U.S. Capitol and said a prayer with their pocket constitution in their purse, were thrown into federal jail. All of a sudden, all these advocacy groups come and sue the federal government over people that have raped children. But we're silent over American patriots and veterans that went into the people's house non-violently and said a prayer.
Wait,
the hypocrisy is stunning.
Wait, what? No, first off, I'm agreeing. I'm consistent on that. I agree.
No, but you didn't. The point. I'm not trying to criticize you.
Wait,
It's interesting what warrants the advocacy is what I'm getting. Is that all of a sudden we're all like big fans of the Constitution and due process, but the due process for all the other people that did not have the last 4 years was completely radio silence.
To be clear, I'm 20, so I've been 16 back then. So
well, fine.
I'm just.
You're not even aware. It's not your point. It's, let me just offer you some grace. It's not necessarily even your fault. It's the propaganda machine.
No, okay.
The propaganda machine that makes this whole thing like, oh, there's this Maryland father and all this. Meanwhile, we saw thousands of people.
What?
Like,
can I not wait? Sorry, can I not make the same point about the J6ers that invaded the Capitol that they don't deserve due process for invasion?
Many of them didn't get due process.
Okay, I mean, so why would you be against that?
No, of course I'm for it, but they're U.S. citizens. That's the distinction. Secondly, they didn't get due process. And thirdly, all the left-wing groups that are now suing Trump, they wouldn't lift a finger to go help any of the J6ers.
I mean, that's hypocrisy, sure. But
no, it's worse than hypocrisy. It's hierarchy. The left-wing groups basically say, it's more morally acceptable to come into this country and rape children. We'll fight for you than it is to walk into the U.S. Capitol and say a prayer if you wear a MAGA hat. That is basically the message that the left-wing activist legal community is sending right now.
I don't know why you keep like jumping around. I'm talking specifically about the Fifth Amendment. Do you know specifically where in the Fifth Amendment it gives the carve-out where illegal immigrants or illegal citizens don't have the Fifth Amendment rights? Where's the carve-out for that?
It's a generally accepted judicial principle.
Under what case law?
Well, under plenty of, I would have to look up the specific case law.
I personally have. There has been zero case law that cites illegal immigrants. I mean, was it Miranda versus Arizona itself? That was under illegal immigrant.
Under the Enemy Invasions Act, so upon the declaration of an invasion, which President Trump signed on day one, right?
Yeah.
If you notice and recognize an invading force, so let me ask you a question. If all of a sudden China or Russia showed up with a bunch of tanks on our southern border, do we have to give all those people in tanks due process? Or are we able to shoot them?
Yeah, we're able to shoot them.
Okay, then why can't we do the same for MS-13 on our border? And we're actually being nicer than shooting them. We're sending back to their country of origin.
These days, it seems that many colleges and universities have drifted far from upholding the strong moral foundations and cultures they were once known for. Absolutely. Instead of being places that cultivate integrity, they often appear now to prioritize work agendas over real good principles. Yeah, it's scary, ladies and gentlemen. It's sad because there is great wisdom to be found in seeking advice from many voices. Absolutely. When we surround ourselves with a multitude of counselors, people with experience, insight, and diverse perspectives, ladies and gentlemen, we are far more likely to make thoughtful, informed, and balanced decisions. Balanced decisions. No one person has all the answers. No. But when we listen to others, we gain clarity. We avoid blind spots and benefit from collective understanding. Collective understanding, because true wisdom often emerges when we humble ourselves enough to learn from the guidance of others. Yeah, and I, as a conservative, I feel nothing but deep empathy for the young people who have been pushed into believing certain ideologies or lifestyles, sometimes by their parents, who actually promote societal trends over raising their kids in godly ways. Yeah, it's truly heartbreaking to see how these young individuals may be influenced by external pressures and societal trends rather than being allowed to develop their belief systems that is its foundation on true and godly morals. Yeah, because in most cases, these parents, in an attempt to appear progressive or socially aware, they might unintentionally push their children into situations or decisions that they aren't emotionally or even mentally prepared for. It's happening, ladies and gentlemen, because this kind of influence can create confusion, internal conflict, and a sense of alienation in young people who may not have the maturity to fully comprehend certain implications of choices that they make. Yeah, it's a tragic situation. It's like the blind leading the blind, Yeah, that's usually what happens. Because people will say, well, I'm a victim, then they'll pass that mindset to the next generation. I'm a victim, and then that generation to the next, I'm a victim, and to the next, and on and on and on. That's what I'm trying to say. Ladies and gentlemen, we hold the keys to our future through the decision we make today. We hold the keys to our future. Every action has a corresponding consequence. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. If we learn to acknowledge that and make better choices that will align with our values, goals, and desires, the odds are pretty much we'll turn well in life. Yeah. Because the power of this lies in its simplicity, actually. Yeah. Understanding that actions and consequences are inseparable. You can't separate the two. You can't. By making thoughtful choices and decisions, we can truly create the life we truly desire. It's as simple as that. Yeah. Well, my deepest hope, is that these people, they will find true meaning, embark on a journey of discovery that will open up truth right before their eyes. Open up truth. I long for them to break free from all these strongholds of falsehood that have been holding them back for so long. Yeah, invisible gloves holding them back. Because if they want a life of meaning, truth, and purpose, it's found in God. Christ in you, the hope of glory. It's found in God. If they will come to accept the truth, it could mark the beginning of a radical transformation in their lives. And they will live a better future. Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to watch the next one, and also don't forget to share, to comment, and to like, and subscribe. I'll see you again next time. Bye bye for now.